The hospital stood like a forgotten giant at the edge of town, its windows shattered and its walls cloaked in creeping ivy. Known as St. Mary's, it had been abandoned for over 2 decades, ever since a series of mysterious deaths had led to its abrupt closure. Despite its ominous reputation, the hospital had become a hotspot for urban explorers seeking the thrill of the unknown. 5 friends, Mark, Lisa, Tom, Sarah, and James, had planned this night for months. They were seasoned urban explorers, always on the lookout for new and thrilling locations to explore and document. St. Mary's was their ultimate challenge, a place shrouded in fear and whispered legends. "We're finally here," Mark said, his voice tinged with excitement as they approached the crumbling structure. He was the de facto leader of the group, always eager to push boundaries. "Let's make this count," Lisa added, her camera ready to capture every moment. She had a knack for capturing the eerie beauty of abandoned places. The group stood at the entrance, the air thick with anticipation. They knew the risks, but were driven by the allure of uncovering the secrets within. The front door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking ominously as they pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the scent of mold and decay. The entrance hall was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming through the broken windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Stick together and keep your flashlights on," Mark instructed, his voice echoing through the empty corridor. They moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that coated the floor. The walls were adorned with peeling paint and old, faded posters warning of infectious diseases. A sense of unease settled over the group as they ventured deeper into the hospital. As they navigated the labyrinthine hallways, the temperature seemed to drop. Lisa shivered, rubbing her arms for warmth. "Did anyone else feel that?" she whispered. "Yeah, it's getting colder," Tom replied, his breath visible in the frigid air. They pressed on, their flashlights casting long shadows. Suddenly they heard it, a faint whispering just at the edge of hearing. The group froze, straining to listen. "Did you hear that?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Probably just the wind," Sarah suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. But the whispers continued, growing louder and more distinct. They seemed to be coming from all around them, echoing through the empty halls. "Let's keep moving," Mark urged, trying to mask his unease. The whispers followed them, an ever-present reminder that they were not alone. As they turned a corner, Lisa's flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light. She smacked it against her hand, trying to steady the beam. "Did you see that?" Tom exclaimed, pointing down the hallway. A shadowy figure darted across their path, disappearing into the darkness. The group huddled together, their flashlights scanning the area. "It was probably just an animal," Sarah said, though her voice trembled. But the shadows continued to move, flitting just out of sight. They seemed to be watching, waiting. "We should leave," Lisa suggested, her voice tight with fear. "Not yet," Mark insisted. "We came here to explore. Let's check out the basement. That's where the real stories are." They found the staircase leading down to the basement, its steps worn and covered in debris. The air grew even colder as they descended, the whispers growing louder and more insistent. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors and small rooms. Old medical equipment lay scattered, rusted and forgotten. The group moved cautiously, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows. As they explored, they came across an old operating room. The sight was chilling. Rusty surgical tools still lay on the table, and dark stains marred the floor. "This is where they did the experiments," Mark said, his voice barely a whisper. The whispers seemed to grow louder, filling the room with a cacophony of ghostly voices. The shadows on the walls seemed to move of their own accord, twisting and writhing. "We need to get out of here," James said, panic creeping into his voice. But as they turned to leave, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Panic set in as the group realized they were trapped. The whispers grew louder, now sounding like anguished cries. The shadows on the walls seemed to reach out toward them, their forms shifting and contorting. "Someone get the door open," Mark shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. Tom and James tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Lisa and Sarah huddled together, their flashlights flickering. "We're not alone," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. The room grew colder and the shadows grew more defined. They could see faces in the darkness, twisted and tormented. "There's something here," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "Something wants us to stay." Amid the chaos, Lisa noticed an old journal lying on a dusty shelf. She grabbed it and quickly skimmed through the pages, her eyes widening as she read. "Listen to this," she said, her voice urgent. "This journal belonged to one of the doctors. It says they conducted experiments on the patients, horrible, inhumane experiments. The patients who died here, their spirits are trapped." The whispers seemed to respond, growing more desperate. The shadows moved closer, their forms more distinct. "They're trying to communicate," Sarah said. "They want us to know what happened." Lisa continued reading, her voice shaking. "The doctor who ran this place, he was obsessed with finding a cure for a rare disease. He didn't care about the patients. They suffered and died in agony." As Lisa read, the temperature dropped further, and the lights flickered violently. The whispers grew into an angry roar, and the shadows converged into a single menacing figure, a spectral image of the doctor. "You shouldn't be here," the ghostly figure intoned, its voice echoing through the room. The group recoiled in terror as the apparition advanced. It was as if the very walls of the hospital were closing in on them. "Please, we just want to leave," Mark pleaded, his voice shaking. The doctor's spirit seemed to hesitate, then pointed to the journal in Lisa's hands. "Finish reading," it commanded. Lisa's hands trembled as she turned the pages. The final entry detailed the doctor's last experiment, one that had gone horribly wrong. It spoke of a ritual meant to bind the spirits of the patients, trapping them within the hospital forever. "He bound their souls here," Lisa said, her voice barely audible. "That's why they're still here. They can't leave." The doctor's spirit seemed to waver, as if the truth was weakening its hold. The shadows around them began to dissipate, the anguished whispers fading. "There's a way to free them," Lisa continued. "We need to break the binding ritual." Following the journal's instructions, the group hurriedly gathered the items needed to break the ritual: a set of old surgical tools, a vial of blood, and a piece of broken mirror. They placed them on the operating table, forming a crude altar. "Everyone, join hands," Mark instructed. "We need to do this together." They joined hands, forming a circle around the table. Lisa read aloud the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. As she finished, a blinding light filled the room. The temperature began to rise and the shadows melted away. The doctor's spirit let out an anguished cry before dissolving into the light. The whispers ceased, replaced by a profound silence. The group felt a sense of peace wash over them, as if the hospital itself was finally at rest. The door to the operating room swung open easily now. The group hurried up the stairs, eager to leave the haunted place behind. As they stepped out into the night, the first light of dawn was breaking on the horizon. "Did that really just happen?" James asked, still shaken. "It did," Mark replied, "and we have the footage to prove it." Lisa held up her camera, which had captured everything. They knew they had a story like no other, a tale of terror, bravery, and the ultimate release of trapped souls. As they walked away from St. Mary's, they felt a weight lift from their shoulders. The hospital's dark history had been revealed, and its restless spirits had finally found peace. The night had changed them all, and they knew they would never forget the whispers in the shadows. If this story gave you goosebumps, hit the like button and share it with friends who love a good scare. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next terrifying tale.